Can I officially say, "What's up, cuz?" to whomever I want? According to science, yes. This episode will shake your worldview. Since we are all humans, Homo sapiens species, it is logical that we come from the very same first batch of humans. And that seems so far in the past that no one even cares. But the fact is that despite there is 7.59 billion of us, we share ancestors closer to our times than some abstract mammoth hunting prehistory. In our family tree, we have normally 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, and so on. The number of individuals in such a tree will eventually become impossibly high. The more we go into the past, the more ancestors in each generation we have. But how many exactly? One generation counts as 20-30 years. Let's say 25 years, it's okay. You are generation 0. You have 8 great-grandparents who are generation 3. But how many 8 times great-grandparents, generation 10, do you have? 1024 8 times great-grandparents who lived at some point in the 18th century, depending on your age and how long one generation lasted. If we continue to count like this, we'll find out that a single individual alive today would, over 30 generations going back to years between 1000 and 1300, have 1 billion ancestors, more than the total world population at the time. Of course, we can't have so many unique ancestors. The number of them was definitively smaller. It means that in some generation, people shared ancestors. So there was what we call pedigree collapse. Pedigree collapse is the reduction in the number of ancestors. Instead of all different individuals, we have ancestors that show up on more than one branch of the tree. For example, the offspring of 2 first cousins has only 6 great-grandparents instead of the normal 8. So, all Homo sapiens are one big inbred, to some extent. In some cultures, it was a common practice to marry cousins. The isolation of a small population can lead to inbreeding within that population. Even in America, around the 19th century, there were many cousin marriages, as it wasn't uncommon for immigrants to marry someone from their language or cultural group. Nobody thought about the risks of inbreeding. By the way, did you know that in many states in the USA, first cousin marriages are permitted? Inbreeding pros and cons. Pros, if there are any. One and only is everything stays in the family. And as you already figured it out, inbreeding is a thing mostly among royalty. For example, European royalty, who often married other royals, got their gene pool reduced and there was a big pedigree collapse. You remember, one person taking more than one space in a family tree. Royal intermarriage, which was often the arranged marriage, was a common method of securing interests of state to form political alliances among elites. Alfonso XII of Spain, for example, had only 4 great-grandparents instead of 8. What is more, 2 of these great-grandparents were first cousins. there are serious consequences of inbreeding. Inbreeding may cause the genetic disorders resulting from blood relation, or official term consanguinity. The thing is, autosomal recessive disorders, recessive meaning opposite to dominant, occur in people who have two copies of an allele for a particular recessive genetic mutation. Allele is a variant of a gene. We have two variants of a gene, one from a mother and one from a father. Since relatives share a higher proportion of their genes than unrelated people do, it is more likely that related parents will both be carriers of the same harmful recessive mutation. They may be even unaware of it. So, their children are at higher risk of inheriting recessive genetic disorder. The thing is, the risk is lower for relationships between more distant relatives, but still greater than for the general population. First-generation inbred individuals are more likely to have increased genetic disorders, reduced fertility, lower birth rate, higher infant mortality, weaker immune system, facial asymmetry. And the House of Habsburg is a well-known example of that. This royal family was infamous for its inbreeding, which is said to result in the Habsburg jaw, typical for many Habsburg relatives, because there were many blood-related marriages within this family, especially between their Spanish and Austrian lines. The condition got worse in the next generations to such an extent that the last Spanish Habsburg king, Charles II of Spain, could not properly chew his food. Apart from that, Charles II had many genetic, physical, and sexual problems. His impotence led to the extinction of the Spanish Habsburgs. No surprise, since his father and two of his great-grandfathers married their nieces. In ancient Egypt, royal women carried the bloodlines, and a pharaoh often married his sister or half-sister. Tutankhamun's mother was the half-sister to his father. Tutankhamun had two children with his own half-sister, but none of them survived infancy. In the Middle East and Northern Africa, the level of consanguinity is the greatest, which is associated with Islamic populations that have historically practiced inbreeding. Among the populations with high levels of inbreeding, several disorders can be found. For example, in the populations of Qatar, it has led to high risk of inheriting genetic diseases. In 2014, around 5% of the Qatari people suffered from hereditary hearing loss. Most of them were descendants of blood-related relationships. Well, maybe saying love is blind also has its reasons. And now, sex. But not the sex, but sex. Gender sex. Sex is determined by a pair of chromosomes. Men have XY, women XX. There is a 50-50 chance of giving birth to each. And it gets interesting because every woman is a daughter of a daughter of a daughter, and so on to the mitochondrial Eve, because one of those two X's is always passed by a mother. Mitochondrial Eve is the most recent female line common ancestor of all living people. She is the most recent woman from whom all living humans descend in the line through their mothers and the mothers of those mothers, back until all lines lead to one woman. A common misconception concerning mitochondrial Eve is that she must have been the only woman alive at the time, that she is the biblical Eve. No, she was not the first woman or the only living female of her time. Other women living during Eve's time may have descendants alive today, but not in a direct female line. For example, those other Eves could A. have been infertile, or B. gave birth only to males, and since sons do not pass their mitochondria X to their progeny, so mitochondria supply cellular energy, and scientists tracing genealogy trace the changes in mitochondria. In females, you cannot trace the changes on chromosome X, as they have two X's, so one X can come from her mother as well as her father. Mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA, is generally passed unmixed from mothers to children of both sexes along the maternal line, but men don't pass this specific maternal mitochondrial DNA to their children. The variation of mitochondrial DNA between different people can be used to estimate the time back to a common ancestor, such as mentioned mitochondrial Eve. The mtDNA is inherited maternally and recombination is either rare or absent. mtDNA accumulates mutations at the rate of approximately 1 every 3,500 years per nucleotide. So it is not difficult to track the ancestry back to Eve. Some of these new variants will survive to future times, but some mitochondrial lineages come to an end when a woman with a unique mtDNA dies with no daughters. Analogically to mitochondrial Eve, every man is a son of a son of a son of a, and so on to the Y chromosomal Adam. Y chromosomes are male-specific chromosomes that are passed from man to man and lead to Y chromosomal Adam, who is the most recent common ancestors from whom all current living males are descended in a direct paternal line. Although the name Y chromosomal Adam is a reference to the biblical Adam, again, it doesn't mean he was the only human male alive during this time. Those other males may also have descendants alive today, but not in a direct unbroken line. Y chromosomes of those males didn't survive to these times, and again, as it was with women, they didn't have children at all or had only daughters. It is estimated that the age of the Y chromosome most recent common ancestor ranges around 200,000 to 300,000 years ago, which is consistent with the emergence of modern humans, Homo sapiens. But these estimations can be more precise in future. Fun fact: in 2003, a group of geneticists discovered that some 16 million men, which is a 0.5% of the male population in the world, are genetic descendants of Genghis Khan, the Mongolian warrior of the 12th and 13th century. They bear Y chromosome that seems to be his. Well, he was very prolific, as were many of his heirs. After conquering a territory, he chose the most beautiful women and had many children with them. Adam and Eve lived together? Is Bible accurate? Not so much. Sometimes mitochondrial Eve is said to have lived at the same time as Y chromosomal Adam. Even if this were true, which is now regarded as very unlikely, this would rather be a coincidence. A recent study concluded that Eve lived much later than Adam. Estimates show that she lived around 150,000 to 100,000 years ago. Earlier studies considered that Eve lived earlier than Adam, but the discovery of archaic Y haplogroup has changed the previous estimates. However, there is a slight chance that mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal Adam may indeed have lived around the same time, although it is not very probable. How far do we have to go back in time until we reach the most recent ancestor of all humans alive today through even one branch of our family trees? We don't know if it is a woman or a man. In general, the age of this ancestor is unknown. It is less than the age of mentioned Adam and Eve. According to one analysis, this most recent ancestor of all living people lived around the first Common Era, which is only about 79 generations ago. It would mean that the most distantly related person to you on Earth is your 78th cousin! It is believed that the most recent ancestor of humans lived in East Asia, somewhere around Indonesia, Taiwan, Japan, maybe even Chukchi and Kamchatka peninsulas that are close to Alaska. And we can identify the point in time at which all the people living today share the exact same set of ancestors who were alive back then. This point in time is called the Identical Ancestors Point. It is the most recent point in the past where every person alive then is either the ancestor of every person alive now or has no descendants living today. This point lies further in the past than the mentioned most recent common ancestor. It is assumed that the Identical Ancestors Point for all humans is very recent, 5,000, 15,000 years ago. According to some other study, it is exactly the year 2158 before Christ. So, 4,000, maybe 10,000 years ago, all the people living today had identical set of ancestors. All ancestors, in a different configuration of course. All the people on Earth inherit their genes from their ancestors in totally different proportions. Norwegian and Japanese people share the same set of ancestors, but obviously a Japanese person living in 5000 before Christ and having descendants today will appear in a huge number in a present-day Japanese person's family tree, and perhaps only once in a today's Norwegian person's family tree. Similarly, a 5000 before Christ Norwegian person will appear just once or twice in a Japanese person's tree. Fun facts! In 2008, the New England Historic Genealogical Society discovered that Hillary Clinton is related to Angelina Jolie and Barack Obama to Brad Pitt. There is at least 6 US presidents that Barack Obama, whose mother is from Kansas, can call distant cousins. It includes George W. Bush and his father. Obama's other cousins are British Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill, and Brad Pitt is Obama's 9th cousin. Hillary Clinton and Angelina Jolie are 9th cousins twice removed. Clinton has many famous cousins with French-Canadian ancestry. She and Madonna are 9th cousins. Clinton is also a distant cousin of Celine Dion, Alanis Morissette, author Jack Kerouac, and Camilla Parker Bowles, wife of Prince Charles. Dear cousins, there it is, humanity in a nutshell. So do a cousin a favor and subscribe to our family channel. Meanwhile, in some secret lab. Are these two carefully selected DNA segments? And the Babox, as well as other puppets and cartoon characters, will finally have 5 fingers!